Welcome to Proven Sustainable Conversations, a collection of thought-provoking talks with Indigenous and Maroon people and their supporters to realize and challenge our conscious and unconscious colonized thinking and behaviors.
I'm happy to be with you in Maasai. We have a higher spirit, and we believe in our God, who's known as we call Enkai. That's our God, and there's no specific time. It's that we go to a place like a church. We have ceremonial. We have rituals, but every day, as you walk, you always request for blessings. Most of it come from Enkai, but through our ancestors. So I will speak a few words in Maasai to give me the strength, also to guide me and my work and my struggles, and also to request for endurance for the complex and complicated issues that we are dealing with daily. Nai igenywa adu yo yengishon yo yemunyani angori yugol tel dino no munyak so da yo so tua yo yengo ide nasia ide na munyak ai jo do so tua yo ngolon yo mu ai yagra mangati o garai bu oro interma sai kake anga muna balu kainjo da yo ngoi kai nasia yo na boisho yo kishon yo so tua ai dare tu yo dare tu ngajama sai ai le winye do yo so itu ngari yo mai mar ko lusin mai bongata ngajama sai ai to da yo so tua wadu ko yol tel do no manyak to yo ngoi ke na manyak yo so tua yo ngolon ye ngai ma yo gara ari yo swam ari yo ngop ni ya tan yo ai cho cái ngolon damu yo ni bo damu kara damu kishu ye cha ai ado kayai ye sai yinguri ngari yo duat subat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ole. Just formally, my name is Omowale K2 Oladwa, and I am the lead interviewer for Proven Sustainable Conversations. I'm here with my colleague, Kelsey Green, and we will be talking to you over the next hour and a half about your life, your work, and how that work impacts the life and world of your people, the Maasai, but also other pastoralists in northern Kenya. Let me begin with questions about identity. As I understand it, the Maasai take much of their identity from the land on which she lived. How does that convergence of the individual, the group, and the land come together in your understanding of the work that you are doing now all over the world?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And I think it's very important that the name is very important. And the Maasai choose important foundational goal that give hope to people and landscape. The Maasai have a saying that goes that Menya and Garnakon, which means a good name will manifest in good way. If you give a good name, a good name manifests in a better good or good, I think. And and if by any chance you give a bad name to a landscape, then bad things will happen. So a good name. There is a coaches as saying to guide people and society to try and always consider a lot and also take time when it comes to naming ceremony. So this is very important. And when on birth, in birth there are two things that gives you and links and strongly bonds you to a landscape. One of it is when you are born, the placenta. Your placenta is normally mothers. They bury the placenta on earth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great connection. That's a strong connection. And then when on death you are buried yourself. Those are very significant relationship between the person and the land. And so the Maasai also say the land is the heart and the cow is the soul.
Hmm.
So these are very important things connoting that we help people, because if there's no land, then the cows will not have any sustenance in terms of pasture, in terms of water. So the land must be there first as a fundamental part of human life, the Maasai. So I'm the Maasai are mobile pastoralists. They've been more nomadic, but over time, with changes, they're increasingly becoming sedentary. They are settling partly mobile, partly sedentary because of what is happening right now in their part of the world. Much of the land have been lost. So they used to move across a big landscape across East Africa, believed to have come by anthropologists say. It came through north towards like in Sudan, that way through East Africa, and this can be told by, of course, the names Syenta, Ethiopia, to some part of into Kenya, some Maasai names. So we are the Maasai also territorial they are overall Maasai, but we have sections, territorial sections. So I am part of the Laikipia Maasai, who are north central of Kenya. Most of the Maasai were there before they were moved forcefully by the colonial. They were moved. The Maasai are people who have suffered much more under colonialism, at least as far as Africa is concerned, and they have suffered more like how the natives Americans have suffered there, because they were forcefully removed from their land. And so I am part of the Laikipia. We have other Maasai. We have the Purko Maasai. We have Lamat. We have the Kisongo in Tanzania. There are quite a number of spread, but so I'm Laikipia. And when you see the prefix IL in Laikipia, it says people of Laikipia. People. If you say Kisongo, so the il is a kind of a prefix meaning people of that landscape.
Okay.
People that belong there. So Laikipia is a place, and that was preoccupied mainly by the Laikipia Maasai, who are now a minority. So I am from a family, Ole Kaunga. Ole means son of. The family name is Kaunga, and my name is Mali. So my given that name, it's more or less like Swahili, but also Swahili, but also also Maasai. But it's a name given meaning wealth. It's wealth, but not necessarily physical or material wealth, but wisdom, guidance, leadership. Those are Maasai feel wealth in different ways.
Okay.
So wealth of you can leadership. So it's more or less anticipated by my grandparents that there'll be wealth of leadership, wealth of leading people, but also somebody who can lead people to prosperity. So this some of the link, but also it can also mean material wealth in terms of chaos, but also in terms of an understanding of the notion of wealth. It is not something for individualistic. If you have cows, it's for something that it's something to be shared. Resources are to be shared. So if you have and I don't have, then you share and we all live in a shared landscape. So this is very important. So we live in northern Laikipia and have been there for since I was born. Both of my parents are alive. They're fairly old right now, late 70s, late 80s. And we live in this area where much of the land are still living in the colonial kind of setup. We have these big ranches owned by white people who didn't go back to their lands when it was after independence. So these people here living, their land has been taken, and there are a lot of historical trauma about what they have lost. They've lost the land and also. So that's how I live, and these sort of things have influenced me to drive kind of do what I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You said that you've been an activist your whole life, that you saw instances where your father was arrested for grazing cattle. And you've also just said that Mali speaks to the wealth that you bring into the world as a person who has great understanding and the ability to represent and bring possible solutions to your people.
Yeah, this is basically, you're very right. So, but also names were given also in terms of as a sign of hope, to give people the other line to it when I was born in a bad drought, and where my family has lost almost everything. So they see so a kind of a blessing in disguise. Is born dry, so it's a way that perhaps this person bring new spirit, new something, so that it's a way for God, our God, and try to bring this wealth back after with the rains, and then we can continue to rebuild our lives. So this you're right.
Okay. Did you bring the rain?
Not really in that sense, but yes, I consider a proportion of pastoralists and other marginalized groups consider me as a hope, a source of hope for the struggles of this marginalization they are suffering. I'm a voice to their issues. I'm the one organizing for action. So in that sense, there is rain coming, and there's rain in that sense, and they are seeing it because I've been involved in very many ways in struggles that restores their hope, it restores their dignity as a people. So in that sense, when you have no hope, even if it rains, they can't change. But when you have hope that one day you will succeed, and that's and show that one day they believe right now that one day some of the issues that are really critical will be solved. So we have the reins of hope.
Okay, you have the means of hope. Yes.
Reins of hope.
Yes. The reservations, we call them reservations here in America, that the traditional indigenous people were pushed onto. That similar thing has happened to the Maasai and other pastoralist people in Kenya, Tanzania, other parts of East Africa. How are you addressing that? No, let's back up. How does that relationship between the colonizer and what has happened to the people still living on the land still affect your work? What is the impact of colonized mind on the people who you are representing? And how are they working that out? How are you helping them to work that out?
So I think it's very good to know, the setup, the colonial domination in for the Native America reservations, reserve, and also the issue about the decimation of the buffaloes and all that. Equally happened here, but specifically for the Maasai. So in 1904 and 1911, this one when was the first treaty. 1904 was when the first treaty was signed between the Maasai traditional leaders and were asked by the British colonial administration to sign this to create two reservations for the Maasai. One was in the north, which is Laikipia, and then the other one was in the south, which is Ngong, the border of Kenya and Tanzania. So it's then it required that all Maasai vacate these lands, the best part of their land, so that for the settlement of the British, it's a way of creating land to reward the British who fought in the war. So this is exactly what happened, but they were moved. So they were moved to clear land, the best part of the land, so for commercial beef production, to raise cows, to feed British soldiers. There are different parts of the world where they were fighting the war. Yeah, and then after some while, in 1911, there was a revision of the first agreement. Treaty, actually their treaty. Because Maasai is a nation made of different subsections of them. So in 1911, there was a second treaty that required Maasai to vacate the northern reserve, which is Laikipia, where I come from, so all of them to be moved to the south. And then what happened, the Maasai started to resist. They started to resist, say, no, we can't move. But they were really forcefully pushed. And then a lot of them lost their cows. A number of them suffered because it was a forced militarized move. And then they lost so many of their cattle, which is the backbone of their economy. And they were introduced livestock diseases that really weakened the people. So that was the beginning of the crumbling of the Maasai as a nation, because they were fragmented into small groups that are unable to collectively defend themselves. Others are in in small pockets. And this is exactly the situation where they are, when you remove the economy, the weakened economy of the people, they end up on dry season, they end up becoming very poor and not unable to fend themselves. So this is exactly, and in terms of colonization, that's now, colonization is a domination of us over, is a weakening of your economic food system. If you want to attack people, you attack them by ensuring that you either feed them, so you control their feeding system, their food system, their economy, and that's exactly what happened. And they started by taking away the land. When they take the land, the people can't really manage and to keep the livestock. That they will really be important to sustain themselves, and also you realize so many things happen, and then you begin again by the school system, and then you start reading things like the first man to discover Kilimanjaro, the first man to discover Mount Kenya. It was so and so. You distort history of a people. And this is happening up to it's still a number of things in our own education system. Still the representation of the Maasai and reflecting the Maasai as primitive people to the extent that they affect the core part of a human being, which is dignity, to the extent that you really don't really believe in yourself. And it's to the extent that wearing, up to until recently, wearing traditional clothes was seen as a very backward, very primitive. So people started wearing other westernized way to look as the way the white people, and then they take the leadership. So the colonization still manifests in so many ways, through the food system, through the education system, and also the way things are done, things are done. For instance, even up to the current way, segregating how wildlife conservation is done. You separate people from and wildlife, yet they have always shared the same landscape, and they know they interact. People have animal totems, so they have relation. They share the same land. They relate. And if you see the current history of Kenya, big towns, big cities like Nairobi, Nakuru, Naivasha, Nanyuki, these are all Maasai names that have been corrupted. These are all Maasai names. That tells you that people were here. Yeah, so beside the issue about restoring, correcting historical injustices, there's also a strong need to really decolonize how place names are being because that's distorts completely the history. It's a way to completely ensure that people who are born will at some point have completely forgotten the heritage above their people. They can't really connect the dots.
Okay.
So this some of the way it does, and also the schooling system, where up to until the issue about the language, how you can use. I remember when I went to school, the primary, it was more or less you will be punished if you speak your own mother tongue. You see, you'll be rewarded if you speak good English. But speaking speaking, talking, using your own language is it used to be what we call a motto. So if someone speaks mother tongue, you give them that. So at the end of the day, the school lessons, the teacher for each and every class say, who has the motto? And you'll be caned, you'll be punished, physically caned, but there have been campaigns to stop this kind of, so at least right now, there's some room to also encourage the mother tongues. And this is because of the outcry and this is why I do participate in global movements and of indigenous peoples. Because that's how I was pushed to the current level where we have the international, the UNESCO, the International Year of Indigenous Languages. It's a struggle has been as a way to elevate and recognition of indigenous languages and the value and the relate to the landscape. So we still have colonial hang-ups around us as we grow, as we do our day-to-day work. Yeah, and also considering all this, what I'm doing, it's very important also to know that your own fellow, they don't really, they are kind of an attack on the humanity of, to the extent they can't think that you can succeed doing what you are doing unless there's a white man behind you.
Everything is posited in a Western frame.
Yeah, so
you can't see yourself legitimately with power and agency unless you go through them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Do you have an example, like a specific example? Because right now, like this interview, right, it's in the colonizer's language of English, and the global work that you're doing in UNESCO, it's acknowledging the importance of these indigenous and native languages. But have you encountered any challenges or a specific example of when you're trying to describe or advocate for something using English as the language to means to communicate about that?
The language, there are quite a number of examples. So even here, I'm trying to translate some of the sayings that have very strong, deep meaning in Maasai. But when we shift them to say it in English, like what just said Menyankarnake on about the name will always be what it is. See, if it's a good name, it will be good. Translating that, and if you describe it in a Maasai and you shift and translate in English, it will lose purpose. It will lose purpose. There's a way for them because there's a way they lose meaning and or the holistic meaning of it. So there's barriers whether we use it. However good we talk good English, but the moment it totally even disrupts me because you have to think and reflect things internally as a Maasai, but communicate in English.
You lose meaning.
You see? So we are making a kind of a makeshift system where kids go to school, it's in English, it's in Swahili for the whole week, and then you come home. You now shift again now to be a Maasai, you now talk in English. So this is something, and most of the things is being transacted it's transacted in English or Swahili for Kenya, and in Kenya, in Tanzania, of course, it is Swahili and then English. It's not very prominent, but there are several many other several other, but also there's a barrier. For instance, it's a barrier. Oftentimes we want to bring leaders. We want to bring leaders who can really come and speak in their own languages. But you see the cost of doing that. the cost of doing that, you have to come and then you have to, I brought occasionally people to the global conferences. And but you have to bring and then you have to translate. You have to come and try. But often when you say if somebody's the sponsors who pay for your cost will tell you, no, we don't have the money for it's only one person who speaks English can come. Because the translation in the UN meetings is in 6 United Nations languages. But if you so that's a barrier already. That's a communication barrier that if so you end up that it creates some that those who only who speaks English are ones who are really going to these spaces, these international spaces, which is not correct. And we appreciate that that things have happened right now that at least there is no longer this. A time I used to be the only one going to these conferences. But right now, at least we have a few other emerging leaders who are participating, and then you can speak in your own language. But it requires that this we try to be creative so that we work with our culture. When I travel, I go with my own ornaments as a way bring culture with me. It's because I am alone, so I bring some of the traditional ornaments. We model a kind of a hybrid kind of a shirt decorated in Maasai. And one example is when I arrived here in Netherlands. It was I remember it was on a Monday. And then I said, "Oh, let me go out and look for." It was a kind of holiday on Monday here, so I went out to go looking for food. So I walk, and then my host here was also with me. As we were walking, somebody came. A lady, black lady, stopped. Came out. Hi, how are you? Oh, are you Maasai? My daughter saw you with the red shawl and says, "Mom, there's a Maasai there. There's a Maasai walking." And then she came and said, "Are you Maasai?" Yes. Oh, my daughter said there's a Maasai. So there's a way, and you don't leave your identity, and it's easier, very easy to dress, and then somebody to identify. It was very amazing because of the first kind of contact I made. And there's a young girl of about 12 years who said, "Oh, Mom, there's a Maasai." And apparently they came to my area where they are not Maasai themselves. But the people see Maasai differently because the way they dress and the way they. So they say, "Oh, Mom, it's a Maasai." You see? So this it really kept me laughing. It really so and this is happening on a day-to-day life, even in Nairobi. People will call you if say you dressing this way. So instead of saying, "Excuse me, can I talk to you? What's your name?" You say they will directly call you Maasai. Okay? So this some of the things it is not necessarily bad, but it shows that it is a time that the rest of Kenyans have been seen to mean the primitive ones because of the way they dress. Yeah.
Yeah. Kels, did you have a follow-up?
No, I really appreciated that and think we can move on to addressing other aspects of his work as well.
Okay, it seems that the fundamental question that you're addressing with your work, Molly, is what does it mean to be human, and how does humanity get represented for the interests of my people and other pastoralists? And you're doing that in all of the frameworks, all of the principal frameworks, policy frameworks, legal frameworks that have been set up by the people who push the Maasai off their land. How are you dealing with this fundamental contradiction? It's a fundamental contradiction. What does it mean to be human? Means one thing to a Maasai man. It means something else to an Englishman. How does that contradiction get resolved in the work that you do on a daily basis? How are you dealing with that?
I think it's very important that the issue that you bring, and what you are doing is actually aiming on a moving target. Because things are moving so fast. You are trying to address in just a very I'm working to address and to challenge policies and laws that marginalize or discriminates Maasai and other indigenous, because you are created these laws. It was assumed that one day the Maasai will disappear, and then we'll be dealing. The idea of the government and the policies and all that is a kind of to assimilate people into this law. Those are the idea, and they have succeeded in many other places because they have succeeded in many other Kenyans. They have succeeded in other part of Africa. That's why the whole element of indigenous peoples of Africa is quite different from what we have there in the US and also in the Latin America. But here they say the people who have refused to change, the resistant to change. That's how it started. These are people resistant to change. They shifted again to the to people against change. So we've been named and framed in different ways because, for instance, people have assumed that Maasai will live their own, and other pastoralists will live their own mobility, wildlife, means of livelihoods, of moving from one place and then settle, so that services can be brought to you. See, this has been used. If you look into areas like Botswana, where the way they have dealt with the San, the Basarwa in central Kalahari, if you look into other areas in Namibia, these things have been done to try and forcibly settle people. But so because we've been adamant and continue to resist, we are now saying laws that allows people, everyone, to practice their traditional livelihood in the best way they feel is what is needed. It's not people who need to change. It's the policies and laws that need to change to be accommodative of it. And that's my work right now, and other activists, to transform law. The current laws are very discriminative. They are very marginalizing. So transform the law and make sure that the law allows people to express their cultural expressions in the best way they can. Allow people, allow laws that really enhances people's identity rather than that minimizes or marginalizes people's identity. This is what we are saying, and this is part of the struggle that I have to fight day and night, because there are laws coming up. There are those who are there, and the Maasai can't do it. The Maasai can't do it alone. You have to be in solidarity with others to big the voice, because it's only not the Maasai. The Maasai are the most researched, the most written. Do you remember? There are so many. If you go to some of the early authors as early as anthropologists who wrote The Last of the Maasai. You see, The Last of the Maasai means these guys are dying. You see, and so, but we are still here and very vibrant, and the issue is we are challenging those laws that say we are not less Kenyans or less citizens. So the humanity, the human dignity, what the law needs to recognize, that there are certain rights, like the right to life, the right to dignity, is not to be defined or given by a government or those who make laws. These are people. These are these inherent rights that you have with, and that's what laws. So for us, and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the whole issue about self-determination is very important to determine how you want to express, how you humanity, how you dignity, how you want to interact with your land, not the way the state wants you to define and do yourself. This is very important that human dignity and the life is very important in ensuring that that those other things, even if you have land and your dignity has been abused as a person, then the way you interact with that land affects. So issues that we see other Maasai people diving into is because of intergenerational trauma of their livelihood, their identity being distorted and being cut off from their land. The issue about alcoholism, the issue about violence, and the issue about these are not things that are these are a creation to reflect Maasai differently, but the Maasai is people fighting for their dignity, and their dignity has been abused in so many ways through laws, through punitive laws, through so many ways. They are still happening in colonization even right now. In some areas, we normally the Maasai men do walk. They have a sword. They have their own. It's part of their dressing. And then you go to some place and then you are not allowed. You are not allowed to go to the city with your sword. And the Maasai say, no, why? This is part of this is part of us as a people. This is how the way we are supposed to be complete. It's also imply how you dress. So we have a number of challenging laws and ensure that the laws are inclusive, respect the Maasai identity, respect the way they live, respect, and collectively also the rest of the society, the pastoral nomads and other kind of traditional communities which are still practice their traditional because that's how their traditional economies are. This is an attack on a people's identity.
Have you had successes in negotiating with, dealing with the Kenyan government? Are there successes that you can point to that give the people hope?
Oh yeah, quite a number of them. First of all, I think even before we come, I think the first thing we tried when we did and we won, even after when I started this work in my initial organization called Osiligi. Osiligi is a Maasai name for hope. That was my initial organization. And it's up to right now, they really, you don't like this name. I like most of our programs are named after Maasai name because people identify with it. They have human touch. So Siligi was a Maasai name that we hope. And then we did great things. First of all, we brought a case against the British government for the use of pastoralists for training exercises, and a number of young children, children, young people, and also women, they were injured because they train, they use ammunitions all over. So in 1998, 99, I dealt with that up to 2004. And we won the first case. And we went with some lawyers in the UK and solicitors who came to try how we can help us. And then before the case reached the court, the British government opted for an out-of-court settlement. And we won, and people were compensated for others who were injured and that. Immediately after that, we brought in another case to get our land back. That's what we want. The land, the Maasai, that the land that we lost in 1904, 1911, all the land that goes to over millions of acres, we needed it back. And it became one of the most revolutionary things that have happened because there were attacks on this. The Maasai tried to get the land back physically. They went into these ranches, grazing their cattle. So they said, and for our whole 3 months, there was chaos in this area. And the government really deployed a lot of the same thing was happening in Zimbabwe about that time. So the government really and the British government, they really were very repressive. They used a lot of force. A number of people were arrested. A number of and others injured, shot by the police as they were repulsing back. So we had these tensions for quite some time. We did not win this, but the message became very clear. The world knew. The world knew that these issues about the Maasai that have never resolved. That was the first time people, even Kenyans, to know that the Maasai had treaties with the British government, just the way they had done with the Canadian reservations and the Canadian tribes and those things. So, but really, with the success story of that, the issue was brought up to right now. This the National Land Commission they had to create a mechanism to address historical land injustice, not just for the Maasai, but for the rest of people who felt aggrieved. The Kenya, through this process, the National Land Commission was created, in the constitutional reform, but also were required to revisit historical land injustice as from 1895, from when Kenya became a British protectorate. And so up to right now, those cases are still being filed, and the commission is still reviewing all those cases. So that's a success story. There's an avenue pushing government to really to address issues, and other tribes did that. The other thing also is in terms of land and securing land, so that we cannot continue losing more land. It's been pushed to secure tenure rights for nomadic pastoralists. And in 2016, there's now a law on community land, and there's a Community Land Act law of 2016, which right now gives community rights to secure their land and register it, so nobody sits in the collective ownership. And also, Kenya, for the first time, I think in 2010, there was the best. There was also the time that things also happened in Kenya. Well, that's when the colonial, the Lancaster Constitution was also reviewed, and then we have more progressive. We have a more progressive constitution right now. And if you look, there's a section, a whole section of the constitution that talks about marginalization marginalization and the minority groups, and how these are creating affirmative action. So there are a number of big success stories there, but also pushing for policy reforms to people pastoralists to be respected. These are some of the things that I've done, and even up to right now, under this law, community land, we have secured quite a number of lands amounting to, right now, up to until last year, we had secured about 1.7 million acres of land, and by the end of this year, we will have secured about something like about 3 million acres of land to community lands that belong to different communities, and strengthening our own. And when now people are able to lead sustainable pastoral economies. So there are a number of things. This is just part of it, but the inclusion, the strengthening, we've been able to quite a number of cases. We brought a number of cases to challenge companies that are taking land. We have and won. So there are quite a number of cases. We are well known for starting the strategic litigation. In Kenya, challenging laws, challenging corporates, challenging other forms of oppression. So this is very important, and Also, training paralegal workers. We have trained so many paralegal workers who really are the kind of they are there to always protect the community. If people communities, the paralegals they are there to repulse. So communities are able to really themselves push back.
Okay. Kels, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so first of all, it's incredible, all of the wins, and I know you didn't even get to the depth of all of them, but thank you for sharing some of those really significant ones. And you were just mentioning even, right, that pastoralism is tied to the sustainability and the sustainability of pastoralism. Can you speak to why pastoralism is a practice of sustainability in particularly a time of climate crisis?
Yeah. Pastoralism, yes, is first of all, we need to know that pastoralism is a very important way of they contribute to climate solution in so many ways. This is based on sharing of resources. If you go to a place and at the moment you go out of the cities and go to traditional lands, you realize as you go that people only take very little what they need from the environment, as opposed to the city where you want everything. If you go there and we travel, you find people just carrying a bottle of water, something, and because they have cows and all that, so it allows a balanced relationship and a healthy relationship between people, the land, and the cattle or other forms of life. See, the land is the main pillar. The cows feed on the grass. So people need land first, even before you talk about wildlife. And you know, they can't stay in an area more than they know how. They can't overstay in an area. So they move in a very strategic movement where they know we have to spend about if it doesn't rain, we spend a maximum of 3 months here, and then we go to another area. This area rejuvenates, it regains itself. You go to another area. So you say, okay, right now there's a lot of grass, overgrown grass, or before an area like a forest, in dry season, let's go up the mountain. Because if we don't go there, the invasive species and fires becomes a threat. So they move to that area and stay utilized. And the cattle manure, it's one way of giving the health of the soil. And it happens in the rotation. They can go this direction. They can go one direction even up to, they can go as far until the rains, and then they come later on slowly. But when they leave these areas, they find out that some lands have been taken away because they are not there physically. And people say, oh, these people are using a lot, they are mismanaging the land. The same people who are curtailing how the traditional economy should run, the same people who are accusing the Maasai of not using healthy land practices are the same the same people taking land from them, and then and then come accuse them of the same thing. I take half of your bread and then come accuse you that you are not very good in managing your resources. Yet I've taken, yet I've taken part of it. You see, so those are they are blamed. They are kind of a punch box. Everybody is punching on them. The scientists say, "Oh, these people, the wildlife conservation. Oh, these people are destroying the environment." But recently, the things are emerging. Why why are wildlife not staying in the protected areas, the land that were taken away from the Maasai? Why are the wildlife following where the Maasai and other pastoralists are going? Because the grass there is not very tall, is very palatable, it's very good. So those are the questions that they are now beginning to run, and the Maasai are telling them the parks, no animals will stay, no wildlife will want, even elephants. They don't want tall, old grass. They grow old, nothing will. So if you either have to right now ban so that new grass can do, or allow cows to graze. And there's a lot of practical, so they are very important. They are very important. The livestock is very important, and the way of traditional land use. But also not even that. The culture is embedded with institutions that govern and manage resources. So it's not just about the land. There's a cultural embedment, and how you can, thereby cultural protocols in which we grow being taught. During the rainy season, this is not very good for goats, for livestock, for sheep. During this season, don't do that. Don't cut trees. Don't do this. Is something we grew as children because the society is embedded in part of the culture. So it's very important. The other thing also, they are very important. The livestock species are very important because they propagate. As much as the bees are very important, the butterflies, also the livestock are very good in distributing the seeds across the landscape. This is very important.
So the traditional ways of dealing with the land that the Maasai and other pastoralist people have is a relationship. It's not extractive. It's a relationship that you have that allows the land to renew. Correct?
Yes, exactly. It's regenerative. It's regenerative.
It's regenerative. Yes. Can you talk about the Northern Kenyan grasslands carbon project and how that project is trying to usurp that regenerative process for its purposes, and its regenerative process is about making money?
Yeah, the experience we have right now is that you have to commoditize pastoralism for it to have value. Yet it has value for those people. You wonder what values it requires. That it's my own. It's my own choice, my identity. So pastoralism is not. It's a traditional economy. But it's also a cultural practice. It's also an identity. It makes the human, the pastoral. It makes me complete. It gives me purpose, and a big purpose to relate with land. So there are so many. So commoditizing it is actually disrupting it, weakening it. See, bring issues like the capital, ABCD, and also for the carbon projects that are coming, and because there are so many of them right now coming into the rangelands, dryland ecosystems. It is nothing scientifically they are bringing in. It's only they are just using the same traditional concept of Maasai. The only thing they are doing is they are putting it on paper. Because that's entirely what the grassland carbon initiative is you allow grass to grow, you rear cattle there before a certain age, you move to another area. But it's something that people have been doing for time immemorial. It's only that we have not sat and written, and we don't see it in terms of carbon money. You see, right now it is now disrupting. It's now disrupting the whole ecosystem because pastoralists and other people in this landscape are now changing they are now changing relationships. They are now seeing land in terms of financial, they see it in financial time. You go, I have my land, it's conservation, 20,000 acres. How much money am I getting here? So then this will totally disrupt how people will relate to the land, will interact with the land, and that's the damage. The other damage that this thing will this project by commoditizing pastoralism already. Money has been used in the past to really destroy communities, and the amount of damage that have been created by money, either through this kind of carbon initiatives, the damage will be created by imposing capitalism ways will really be very harmful to the environment in years to come, because carbon investment, they are between, I think, 10 to about 30 years and above for carbon to mature, get money and all that. So you can tell me, and nobody's asking themselves what will happen after the carbon money 20 years. They have now started to say, oh, in this area, you can't graze your cows. You can't graze your cows here. We don't want some species of livestock. We don't want sheep here. But people are telling them that this is weakening us. If you can't keep, how can we survive without our livestock? So it's mental, and it's another colonial way of seeing pastoral lands as a solution to carbon, without necessarily acknowledging the practice, the traditional knowledge, the traditional economy. Is actually what is really been helping and contributing to biodiversity and also land management.
And these are decisions that are being made by the Kenyan government with outside interests.
Yeah, they are outside interests. They are driven by global policies like the Paris Agreement on based on the United Nations framework on climate change. So what happens here? Every country is now goes under review. So we have now the Climate Change Act, and then in this act you have to have all these technical things like national determined contribution, the carbon. So the real thing is actually the real threat. The buyers of carbon credits, the Netflix, the Facebooks, people, the people who produce much more carbon, who are the biggest, the polluters, the industrialized nations, are simply buying licenses to continue polluting the world, and then talk about credit. It's a kind of a false, it's a marriage that we address the climate change by commoditizing nature.
So is your challenge, of course, is to that process, but is it with the Kenyan government that you have to get them to change to not allow these interests to usurp the land and commodify it?
So what is happening, because what is right now happening, because laws have been passed, and there's a Climate Change Act, there's Carbon Regulations Act, regulations. So what we are doing actually is we are insisting then, okay, we have law and the land belongs to us. We have registered. We are saying and telling the government, carbon investment, another form of investment, just transition investment, should not be undertaken until communities have their own legal ownership, so that they can have the negotiating power. So that's one. The other thing also, there have to be full process of free, fair, informed consent. for people to engage and negotiate for good deals other than being pushed along by companies. So the communities must be participate. They must have their own lawyers. They must have their own legal advice, their own technical advice to be able to engage for fair and engage in initiatives that does not really harm, to ensure it doesn't harm them. Because we have experiences, for instance, we have been doing a lot of research. We have experiences even as far as the US, in the California and other areas, with the Yurok tribe. They have been dealing with carbon for the last, in California, they have been dealing a lot of carbon. And we realized that they are using carbon credits income to really purchase, to buy back their land that was lost by colonizers. And they are using that to invest to ensure their kids have access to good education. So the Maasai also, because of the shrinkage of their land over the years, and they also, if they have to engage if they concern themselves in a proper way that they want to invest, they also need to have to do it in a very in a way that it's them who decide, not decision being made by others. So this is some of the things that we are categorizing. Okay, communities are not saying so, but we want this to happen for this to happen. So these are now a kind of a negotiations. And our role here, and my role, and also the role of impact as an organization, is to actually ensure that people understand their rights, the right to land, and they really can use that. The other thing also, that due process is engaged, all processing safeguards, is protecting safeguards that protect communities against bad practices, but against corruption by these companies dealing with carbon, the carbon proponents. So we putting measures in place that it will ensure eventually there's fair and transparent carbon initiatives, because it's happening. It's happening, but it's happening in a that way. But can we do it in a very clean, transparent, and also in a way that communities can negotiate?
And the way forward is a collective process. It's a collective approach, and you're doing that through Parent, is it?
Yeah, we are doing it. We are doing that, and one of the roles right now, we are bringing experiences and trainers and people organizing, and we have produced tools such as free fund tools. We are using community radios to create awareness that if you have investors, make sure you telling communities, not just the Maasai. If you have this, they are processes that need to be followed. So we use radio to communicate. We use workshops. Last year we had a conference for East African indigenous peoples in last November in Kenya. We brought about 400 people across East Africa just to train them and raise the issues. And we continue organizing training. We bring in experts and to ensure that people I understand what's happening, but also in this how the whole market works. The other thing also, the United the free, prior, informed consent also includes the right to say no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It also includes the right to say no. If you can consult with us, and then we eventually say no, we don't want it. That's a right. That's a right. It's not that because you have done FPIC, free, prior, informed consent process, it's automatically going to have to be, we have agreed. No. It's a process that can take as many years as possible.
Okay. Kelson, we've got about 10 minutes left. Anything that you want to get in before we begin to close out?
No, just want to make sure we hear any closing remarks from you, Molly, as far as everything? I know you've referenced a few times, like links and your specific foundation organizations and what you're advocating for. So if there are certain resources you really want to make sure listeners are paying attention to, visiting, supporting, and also just curious if there is one or two kind of prominent questions you would want to pose to listeners to reflect on or answer themselves. That's my closing remarks, and it's been so fulfilling to engage in this deep conversation with you, and really appreciative of your time and contributions today.
Yeah, first of all, I think is a we find ourselves between our service drop sometimes because the kind of work that we are doing is voluntary work, and we are dealing also with very hard things that cannot be solved in a short time. It's a process, engaging, mobilizing, building movement, building, connecting people's voices, building agency, building voice. It requires a lot of investment, and it's very frustrating as well because the kind of support from the kind of support is not coming really from the media. From the media, we are losing the civic space is shrinking. We are losing the media, so we are heavily dependent on social media to bring out your voices. So the cost of doing what we are doing is what's happening right now when the turbulence when governments are reducing their aid. So we have a problem in the sense right now, if you see a majority of funds, philanthropic funds, or foundations or private foundations, you realize also the way in which they give their resources is not really done in a very dignified way, because you have to do the intermediaries. You write, you have to justify. You have to justify why you're doing it, how it is gone. For instance, you can write almost, if I can consider the number of requests and a lot of requests I've written, the proposals and responding, and you don't get it. Could have been several books by now, because I've been doing this work for about 32 years continuously now, whether it's man or not. So it's an issue of goodwill that is really dependent on well wishes. So I think, to me, we are dealing with a complete whole broken system.
Mhm.
A colonized system of giving, where I give you, instead of enhancing my voice, that money is not really, it becomes somehow restricted. You can't use it for this to advocate for your rights. You get this year, we get a few money bucks here, and then next year we don't have, and then it's not consistent way of people wanting to invest in human rights and people fighting for the justice. There's still a lot of discrimination, and the color of philanthropy, and this needs to be very important. The color of philanthropy is white, and because that's where the wealth is. That's the whole. But and they're also occasionally, if you look, they have contributed in a way in a broken system themselves. So you wonder what am I doing here? I say that I'm sure you are dealing with philanthropists who are controlling. You are dealing with ODA money that is shrinking. And you're working against the system, and you see, okay, you're working against yourself at the end of the day. But we don't stop simply because people are not giving. At some point, there will be sense and investment in this way. The other thing also that is very important to mention is that it's a social justice movement or building movement and agency. It's a way, it's an empowering way than actually giving more the service delivery like what are they. It's rebuilding a whole, or it's rebuilding hope, rebuilding how people relate with their land and enabling people to restore their food system. And it takes time to correct a broken system that is heavily capitalistic, and we want to really also a dominant system that drives a system that thrives on the poor. It's a system that thrives on the weak, a system that thrives on marginalized many marginalized people. So to me, I think there are quite a number of things that and this can be addressed through movement. And finally, and it's very important for also both the media, and because everything is increasingly becoming a process of colonization. I think media has been bought by government. Media has been bought by. So we don't have the media. The only thing we have is social media, and that's you wonder who will be using the social media to create change. So to me, I think indigenous peoples globally want to really connect and create a powerful voice and movement and create their own spaces of communicating. Because all these are these are all tool of manipulation. Sometimes if you say something, you realize that your message has been removed from either the platform or something like that. So it's not entirely fighting for freedom takes a lot of time. It's very important that such messages goes to areas of to people who really value human dignity. At the end of the day, it's a human dignity. At the end of the day, what is it? What is it? Is what you are doing? Is what you stand for? Is it enhancing the human rights? Is it enhancing the human dignity, or is it actually a way of oppressing? These are issues that the pastoralists, the Maasai pastoralists, whatever they are, whether they are from South Africa and from Northern Africa, they're Sahel, they are not fighting for special rights.
Mm-hmm.
They are simply reinforcing the fact that we are human and you need to be treated with dignity just as much as all other citizens of the world are being. We want to participate in other civic right, and we want to participate as people who are respected, who have rights, not as a small parts of the whole. We want to be the part of the whole. We may be small, but we are contributing a lot in terms of the heritage, in terms of the cultures that gives the world a biodiversity. So what we are, pastoralists are claiming the right to self-determination. We need the space to really practice our own rights and to be who we are according to our own cultural expressions and our traditional economies. So these are some of the things that we stand for. And we also stand for the human dignity and need to invest in such social movements in traditional economies, because that's where the solution to climate change lies. Because those are people at the front line of climate change. Thank you so much, and it's been great to know you, meet you, and I appreciate finally we've been able to do it.
Well, Molly, thank you for the time that you have given us. Thank you for the work that you're doing. You're a warrior in the best sense of the word, because you're defending and representing humanity. And that's what this is all about. It's about what does it mean to be human in a world that is framed by anti-humanness. So thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for this time, and peace and gratitude to you.
We hope you found this conversation insightful and thought-provoking. Please like and follow the Proven Sustainable podcast to spread the word, and stay tuned for more engaging dialogues. Additional information and resources are available within the episode description and online at provensustainable.org.